What's up, everybody? My name's Parasite. Welcome back to the Jose Mourinho Challenge with Chelsea. Today we'll be going over the season review. We'll be looking back on some season stats and going through the data hub. And then we'll be preparing for an off season to set us up for next season, where our aim is to win the FA Cup and the Champions League, on top of any other trophies we'd like to get our hands on. But this year, my first full season here at Chelsea, we had a very successful season. We have won 3 trophies, 2 pretty significant ones, and I couldn't really be much happier. We had about as good of a season as I really could have hoped for. First off, let's look at the new arrivals. Top of the list in terms of average rating is Gianluca Mancini. The center back we got on a free from Newcastle. Some pretty good business to get him on a free. And he's only making 80K a week, which is pretty affordable for a Premier League player, especially one of this quality. He is a perfect third choice center back. Doesn't demand insane playing time. But when he steps in, he is extremely good, and I feel completely comfortable if we have to put him in. I don't think there's much of a drop-off from Cereza or Badiashile to Gianluca Mancini. Very happy to have signed him. Hopefully he stays for a few more years. He's got 1 more year left on his deal, but he is 35. I wouldn't be surprised if he retires sooner rather than later. Hopefully it's not next year. Second on the list is probably the biggest one in terms of impact, because, when you have an elite striker, they make a difference. Goals win games, and Bruno Thiago scored goals. Maybe not the rate I'd hoped for, but he's still a young player, 24 years old. His first season in the Premier League, playing at a super high level, day in and day out. I thought he was solid. 27 starts, 23 goals, and chipped in with 9 assists as well. I thought he did kind of what we wanted from him. There were some moments where our finishing was not good enough, and a lot of that was Bruno Thiago. But like I said, he's still young. He's still just going to improve from here. He's going to get better and better as the years go on, and hopefully those numbers go up and up along with it. Third player, another backup for us, Callum Doyle, our fourth choice center back. But again, he's English, he's homegrown in nation, so we had to pay a little bit more for him than I would have liked because of that. But he's exactly what you want in a fourth choice center back as well. He doesn't demand very much playing time at all. He is perfectly happy with the game he's gotten. But he did make 14 starts, so it's not like he didn't play very much. But also when he did play, he played well. That is what you want to see from a fourth choice center back. Just like you want a very reliable third choice, having a fourth choice as well is pretty nice to have, especially if you're a team at the highest level. Up next is the biggest one, definitely in terms of transfer value. $171 million for Giovanni Herrazzo. Just like how important an elite striker is, a world-class goalkeeper is extremely important as well. I think I can pretty comfortably and fairly say that we would not have won the Premier League and the Europa League if Edouard Mendy was our goalkeeper. It just wouldn't have happened. Definitely the Premier League. We might have been able to win the Europa League, but I don't think there's a single chance we would have won the Premier League if Edouard Mendy was our goalkeeper. And we're going to look at some stats a little bit later that prove that pretty much, because Giovanni Herrazzo was very good this season. He was as good as I would have hoped. As we saw at Sporting, he is a world-class goalkeeper, and he's still only 23 years old. Next up for us, another backup, Lewis Nielsen. He was kind of a third choice right back, 5th choice center back. A lot better fee for what you want from that. 9.5 million for that, I think, is a fair price for a team like Chelsea. He didn't play a whole lot, but when he did play, I thought he played pretty well. And he didn't just play against bad teams in the Carabao Cup. He made some appearances in the Premier League, and he held his own. A player we knew at Sporting, brought him in here because we really needed a player to fill that specific role. And I thought he did a fine job at it. And 2 more, really. Gavin Bazunu, just a backup goalkeeper, 5.75 million. Didn't play much, but he's happy being a backup. He's homegrown in nation. Not a big deal there. But then there's Mike Fromm, who is, in terms of average rating, kind of the lowest of all of our permanent signings. $50 million too is quite a bit to spend, but he's still a really young player, 23 years old. Getting really his first major starting time, especially in a league like the Premier League. He had played in the Portuguese league, I think. I think he'd played for a first division side. But he never really played at this level, playing in these kind of competitions, especially this far into these kind of competitions. So the fact he kind of held his own, 7.0 average rating, 5 goals, pretty decent from 11 starts, 10 sub appearances. I thought he was solid. There was really no bad thing about Mike Fromm. I don't know if I'd love him as like our main backup midfielder off the bench, but we've got the likes of Gavi, Mount, and Mariba to kind of fill that role. So in the role he plays, kind of as a developmental guy that can step in and do a job, I think he's a perfectly fine signing. Next, the transfer is out. At the top is the player we mentioned earlier, Edouard Mendy, the 39-year-old goalkeeper. He went to Krasnodar for a pretty cheap fee, but he was making a lot in terms of wages, a lot more than I'd want to spend on a backup. Gavin Bazunu is on a lot less wages, which is pretty big for a player that basically never plays. Edouard Mendy, he was just awful in the few games he played. He went on to Krasnodar, apparently did a decent job, got a 7.1 for average rating, but I don't think you can really compare the Russian league to the Premier League. So, yeah, I think it's still good that we got him out the door. And the biggest sale we made, Pierre Kalulu, sold him for $87 million to Manchester United. I didn't want to do it. Obviously, he would have been a better backup right back than Jimmy Wong, but his contract was running out after the end of what had been this season, and Manchester United had a lot of interest. To get $87 million for a 30-year-old, I'm okay with it, especially because we had Jimmy Wong in the wings as a homegrown guy that had enough quality to come in and be okay, even though he was a little disappointing. But Kalulu played a lot for Manchester United, played decently well, not much of a creator, but that's not really the kind of player he is. More of a defensive guy that can play right back, play center back. Basically Lewis Nielsen, but just a lot more paid. Third choice is Callum Hudson-Odoi, another one that I didn't really want to leave. Obviously, he's homegrown in Nick Club, but another player like Kalulu, whose contract was running out. He wanted to leave. Liverpool offered $40 million for him. Another 30-year-old, $40 million, not 87, but still not bad money. And he barely played for them. 1 starting appearance, 14 sub appearances. He did do decently well in those opportunities, though. 3 goals, 5 assists, 7.07 average rating. We don't really know what kind of quality that was against, but yeah, I would have liked to keep him here, but it's not a super hurtful sale. Kind of one we had to do, and with our current financial position, you know, if we didn't have that $40 million, obviously we'd be in a lot worse spot. And the final ones are just mostly just youngsters that left. Kind of the guy that was our third choice goalkeeper, Benassi, went to Frosinone for $2 million. Borja left on a free. Just another youngster in our academy that's no good. And then Steve Swift, we sold to Fulham for $12 million. Made 1 start, made 7 sub appearances, didn't really do much. He's just, I don't know why they paid $12 million for this guy. Like, he's not good, and he's already 21. We just absolutely robbed them blind, in my opinion. Then to the loans, really only one main one of note, and that's James Boothby. Yeah, we had plenty of midfielders, especially with Isaac Beatty, coming around, staying this year as a backup. He's probably a better player than James Boothby. They play like different roles, but we just couldn't register him. That was kind of an issue. So we had to loan him out, loan him to Watford in the championship, and he played a lot and played very well. 7 goals, 12 assists from midfield. Super happy to see that. Still a player that I think has a future here. Got some older midfielders, so I think James Boothby will eventually play a part here at Chelsea. Now the season results. Starting in the Premier League, they wanted us to win it, which I thought was a little high of an expectation considering we had never finished above 4th in the Premier League, Chelsea that is. And we're coming off of a season where we got Europa League football after not getting European football for like 2 seasons in a row. And then brought me in, wanted me to immediately win the Premier League. But I just went out and did it. Super happy with that. Bruno Thiago, our top goal scorer, 23 goals. B-, we won the freaking Premier League. We never finished above freaking 4th place. I come in, 1 season, we win the Premier League. How can you not be happier than that? Obviously, we topped Liverpool by 2 points to win the league. 4 points ahead of 3rd place Arsenal. 11 points ahead of 4th place Manchester United. They did seal up that 4th spot, even though they ended on similar points, the exact same points as Tottenham. Better goal difference gives them Champions League football. So Tottenham and 6th place Man City get Europa League next year, and Newcastle get that last European spot, getting the Europa Conference spot in 7th. Now into the Europa League, it's another thing they wanted to win. That one I kind of agreed with. I thought we should have won the Europa League. That was my target, and we won it. Yeremy Pino, our top goal scorer in the Europa League with 7 goals. Pivotal match, obviously, the final where we beat Feyenoord. But our run-in wasn't super easy. Obviously, the group stage was pretty easy. Galatasaray, Dundee, Standard Liège. Celtic in the first knockout round, or second knockout round. Not too bad of a draw either. But since then, the toughest team in the competition that was remaining at that point, Atletico Madrid. Leverkusen, who are no slouch. And then we got a little lucky with Feyenoord in the final, but we looked pretty good. We didn't lose a single game other than the Standard Liège game, which we should not have lost. We had the draw against Leverkusen. Other than that, all wins. We were really good in the Europa League. Hopefully it carries on to the Champions League this upcoming season. The FA Cup, though, was a little bit of a disappointment. The board wanted me to reach the final. Their expectations for me this season are just absolutely absurd based on what we've seen from this team the past couple of years. But for the most part, I lived up to them. But not in the FA Cup. Not a great run. Knocked down the 4th round by Leicester. The second game we played, it was pretty harsh to draw Leicester at that stage of the competition. Like, there are a lot of Premier League teams that got like League 2 teams, and I get freaking Leicester City. But we lost 2-1. We should not have lost. We were the much better team. We're just kind of in that little stretch that we get sometimes, and unfortunately came up at the same time as an FA Cup match. But now that we've won the Premier League, we can kind of focus more on the FA Cup next season, trying to win that competition. We did win the Carabao Cup. The board didn't really care, of course, but I mean, I didn't really care either, but we still won it. Didn't have the toughest run in. Did have Arsenal in there, beat them 1-0. Obviously, Manchester United in the final, not easy, but we did get the win. Happy to get another trophy. Moments to remember, the biggest win was our 5-0 win over Woking in the FA Cup. The match to remember was our 3-0 win against Manchester United in January. Very good win. At home against a very good Manchester United team. To get a clean sheet and to get 3 goals. Pino with 2, Chile with 1. Goal of the season was Kai Havertz in the 73rd minute against Atletico Madrid in the 4-1 victory. Let's see this goal. Is it as good? Because sometimes they're not. Usually I feel like they're not very good. It's a 73rd minute goal, assisted by Eduardo Camavinga. You used to be able to click this, and I've seen other people that can click this and it'll go to the goal, but it just doesn't work for me. I don't know why. I gotta go watch the goals. All right, so I think this is gonna be goal of the season. So it's starting with Gary, Alex Mariba, back to Camavinga, Kai Havertz, curler into the top corner, curler into the top corner. Pretty good. Not an absolute screamer, but a pretty good goal. Now the finances. Obviously, that's kind of an issue currently at the club, and I can kind of see why. Our sponsorship revenue was down nearly $200 million. That's a little significant and something I obviously have no control over. I don't know why that is. Maybe just because we hadn't been in Europe the past couple of seasons. I'm assuming that has to be why. So hopefully with us getting back in the Champions League, that'll go back up, and that should fix our financial issue. Broadcasting revenue slightly down as well, but corporate hospitality slightly up. Competition nearly doubled, and match day commercial up by about 800K. Reputation didn't change. Shirt sales, Yeremy Pino, the number 1, Mason Mount, the number 2. Not too big of a surprise there. Kind of a legend, especially at the end of the season. Bruno Thiago in his first full season is up there. Elias Mariba, Kai Havertz up there as well. Not too surprised about any of those, but a little bit Bruno Thiago. Now on to the accolades. I won Manager of the Month twice in January and April, and I also won Manager of the Year. You kind of expect that, winning the Premier League in a team that definitely wasn't projected to win the Premier League. Our player of the season was actually Benoit Chile. Good to see a center back on there. You don't see that often. Young player of the season, Bruno Thiago. Signing of the season, also Bruno Thiago. Goal of the season, we just saw from Kai Havertz. Bruno was our top goal scorer with 32 goals in all competitions. Kai leading us in assists, 19 assists. I thought he had a solid season. Yeremy Pino didn't lead us in either of those, but I felt like he was kind of the mix of Bruno Thiago and Kai Havertz. He did a little bit of goal scoring, a little bit of assisting, a little bit of everything. He got 6 Player of the Match awards. Chile, though, our player of the season, did have the highest average rating at 7.6. Record breakers, most overall goals by a player in a season, 32 for Bruno Thiago, and highest transfer fee, obviously 170 million for Giovanni Herrazzo, but it's still 170 million well spent. We saw that Yeremy Pino led us in goals in the Europa League, and he also set the average rating record for the Europa League at 8.04 from 9 appearances, the previous record being 7.91 with Harvey Barnes. He had a very good season in the Europa League. Hopefully he can continue that in the Champions League. But another inbox thing that I got is that the board are very disappointed that it didn't grow the club's reputation. I won the Premier League. I won the Europa League. What more could I have done? Would winning the FA Cup really have made the difference? Like, oh, you won the Europa League and the Premier League. If you would have won the FA Cup, though, oh, you would. Yeah. What more can I do? Like, I feel like that's a little harsh. Vision expectations. Let's see what they want for next year. Attacking, develop players, entertaining. Sign players under the age of 20 for the future. Something I do typically do. Haven't really done it much at Chelsea so far. Sign young players, develop for profit, wage budget, for contract. Nothing too surprising here. Want me to have the best youth system in the world. Working on it. Currently, it's got a lot of work to do. Their current youth system, the one I came into, was pretty awful. They want us to win the Premier League last season. Then we win it, and they're like, okay, now we have lower expectations. I guess because we're in the Champions League, that'll make it a little bit tougher. But they just want us to get the Champions League again next season. They do want us to get to the semi-final of the Champions League, though. They're a little low on the Premier League compared to what we've seen from them before. But semi-final, first season back in the Champions League in the last, what was it, like 5, 6, 7 years ago? The last time they were in the Champions League. I'm in it for one time. They want me to reach the semi-final. We'll see. In Europa League Player of the Season, it is a clean sweep for Chelsea. Yeremy Pino, probably unsurprisingly, tops that with his 8.04 average rating, 7 goals, and 6 assists. He loves a big match. Kai Havertz, second with 5 goals, 6 assists. Benoit Badiashile did well in Europe as well as the league, getting third in Player of the Season. And then in the Squad of the Season, it's still mostly Chelsea players. Squad of the Season is a 5 at the back for some reason, but Perazo in net, not a big surprise there. Badiashile, Ruggeri at left back, Mason Mount in the middle, would agree. Kai Havertz, Yeremy Pino, and our front three of Bruno Thiago as well. I don't think there's any massive omissions. Obviously, I would say that Alex Mourinho is probably better than Lucien Agume, but you can't put every single Chelsea player in this squad. But, you know, by quality, they probably should be. Now we'll take a quick look through the Premier League analytics in the data hub, starting with the team analytics and the XG table. We finished first, and by XG, we should have finished first. We were the best team in the league by XG and by reality, and Liverpool were also second best. United, though, should have been third. City, who finished fourth, should have been sixth, and Arsenal, who finished third, should have been sixth. The most overperforming team in the Premier League, at least at the top. 17 goal swing in terms of XG against, and 23 in terms of expected points. They massively overperformed, and I don't know if they can keep that up next year. In terms of general team attacking, we are very high in most of these analytics you want to see. And the same goes for the defending. We're in a very good spot. Look specifically in terms of goal output, we're right up there with the high quality shooting and the best defense in the league. Attacking efficiency, also in a really good spot in terms of conversion rate. Shooting, still a pretty good spot. Expected goals to shots ratio, relatively high. All in these green areas so far in terms of attacking. Scoring, we're still up there in a really good spot. Expected goals and actual goals per game. Crossing, we have the best cross completion by a margin, but we don't attempt a mad number of crosses. That's kind of something we struggled with at Sporting. We attempted far too many crosses and it resulted in lower quality chances. We've worked on that, and our first season here at Chelsea, I feel like we've done a pretty good job. In terms of the passing, pretty good spot as well. Obviously, we use two different systems, one more predicated on possession, one basically not predicated on possession at all, looking just to create chances. And so we're not exactly where we probably could be if we just went one of those ways. If we went more possession, we'd probably be up here, but it's still in a pretty good spot. Movement now, really dribbling is not something we really focus on either, and we don't attempt many dribbles, but we don't lose possession that much as well, so that's good to see. I'm a little bit more worried about that than I am dribbling. In terms of winning the ball compared to losing it, again, in a pretty solid spot. Around average in terms of possession won, a little bit below average in terms of possession lost. Defensively, I think we're the best defense in the league. We just saw Arsenal massively overperform defensively. So even though they have a lower opposition conversion rate, I think we're probably the best defense in the Premier League. Tackling, again, in a pretty strong spot. You don't want to have to attempt many tackles. So even though this is, green and green, you want to actually be down here. And that's kind of where we are at. Aerially, pretty good spot as well. The best headers won ratio. Obviously, you don't have many aerial threats up front other than Sesko when he plays. But defensively, with Benoit Badiashile especially, we're pretty good defensively in the air. And then finally, goalkeeping. Again, this is probably more defense and goalkeeper than just goalkeeper. But you can see, I think we do have the best defense in the league. But it is anchored by a very good goalkeeper in Giovanni Herrazzo. Now moving on to the player analytics. And starting with the goalkeepers. Giovanni Herrazzo, we spent a lot of money for him, but he had the second best save percentage in the entire league, only behind Aaron Ramsdale, who we saw as a goalkeeper of a defense that massively overperformed. So I'm very happy with what we got from Giovanni Herrazzo. I can pretty much guarantee Mendy would not have been that good. Next up in the advanced, this is also very good. We didn't face many shots, but Herrazzo still had a very high expected goals prevented. Not Ramsdale high, but that is just absurd. Surely he can't continue that next season. In terms of actually distributing, Herrazzo in a very good spot as well. The best pass completion in the entire league, which is what I want to see. We're trying to play from the back. We don't want our goalkeeper making too many direct passes or just risky passes. We want safe, short, simple passes so we can build up from the back. And Herrazzo's done a good job this season being part of the build-up. Now moving on to the defenders, starting with their general defending. I don't put a lot of focus into this. Typically, you don't want the other team in your box, so you don't want to make a bunch of blocks and clearances. But you don't also want a lot of shots, so you also want some blocks and clearances. I think we've done a pretty decent job of that. Cerezo and Badiashile being the most clearances for us, which is what you want to see. Next up in the tackling, Badiashile surprisingly low, below 58%, but he had the best average rating in the team, so obviously it's not too harming. I'm okay with all of that. Aerially, this is where Badiashile should shine, and he does. Him and Mancini, very good. Sorezzo even a pretty decent spot for a guy that's not dominant aerially. In terms of possession loss, this is where you want your center backs. If you are going to lose the ball, you want to do it in more advanced positions, so it limits their counterattacking opportunities. These guys, you just want them to start the build up from the back, find these short, simple, easy passes. Don't give the ball away. Just do not give the ball away. That's the most important thing. They've done a good job about that. Passing, again, kind of a similar thing. You want them to have a high pass completion. That's what they've got. Crossing, more the fullbacks. Ruggeri in a decent spot. Reguilon, good completion percentage. James being very low for a guy that has like 16 crossing. It's a little surprising. So actually assisting. Ruggeri up there in a pretty decent spot. One of the most creative fullbacks, like the third best, most key passes per 90 behind Luke Thomas and Serginho Dest. Very happy with that. But Reece James, not very good in terms of attacking wise. I'd like to see a better attacking output from him next season. And finally, movement. Don't put a lot of focus into dribbling. It's not really something we really do. Reece James just can't do it. But Ruggeri and Nielsen in an okay spot. Now onto the midfielders, starting with their passing. Everyone in a pretty decent spot. Again, like your center backs, you want your defensive midfielders to have a high pass completion. Don't lose the ball much. That's what they've done. And then your more attacking central midfielders, especially in this tactic, you want them being a little bit more aggressive with the ball. So you're okay with a little bit lower pass completion percentage, but I don't think it's too low that it makes me worried at all about it. In terms of assisting, Beatty, actually the best, but very low sample size. I'm surprised Mason Mount is so high. Attribute-wise, Mariba and Gavi should be much better, but it's been Mason Mount who's been the best midfielder in terms of being creative in terms of key passes and assists. Gavi doesn't have much in terms of goal scoring, so he needs to be up there when it comes to key passes and assists. He's not been enough of a creator this year, and it kind of is reflected in his average rating. In terms of the possession, again, like I said before, it's where you want your defensive midfielders to be. Okay with your central midfielders there as well. Tackling, Beatty, good tackler, but again, low sample size. The rest of the midfielders kind of in a similar little spot. You would expect your defensive midfielders to stand out maybe a little bit more, but I'm not too worried about that. Shooting, Mason Mount again, the best shooter, but Mariba up there as well. He's also kind of the second best goal scorer from the midfield, from decent job as well this season. But you see Gavi, he's just not a goal threat. When it comes to scoring, Mason Mount still up there. Mike Fromm in a pretty decent spot as well. I'd like to see Mariba do a little bit better actually putting away his chances. Hopefully he can do a little bit better job of that next year. But yeah, Gavi, just not a goal scorer at all. So he needs to be better when it comes to creating chances. Finally, we'll take a look at our forwards, starting with the goal output. Bruno Thiago, obviously the goal scorer in the team. Very high expected goals per 90. Sesko in a decent spot as well. Yami Pino kind of in between the goal scoring of Bruno Thiago and the creativity of Kai Havertz. Doing a little bit of both. We would like to see him do a little bit of both a little bit better. Havertz, not much of a goal scorer this year, but a decent creator. I would like to see Zvonarek be a little bit better creator. He really should based on his attributes. Shooting, again, Sesko in a decent spot. Thiago, the best expected goals per shot in the league. Very happy with that. So scoring, again, Bruno Thiago, pretty good spot. Only Haaland, Moukoko, and Mbappe in front of him. Not too surprising there, but very happy for Bruno Thiago. His first season in the Premier League, doing really well. Aerially shouldn't be too great here. Sesko, the only really guy we've got going forward. He did a decent job. Passing, decent spot. I'm surprised Raheem Sterling is up there for pass completion and passes attempted. But Zvonarek and Kai Havertz in a decent spot as well. Crossing, Pino, most attempted, and up there for best completion with with Sterling, who is kind of the more traditional winger of our bunch. Assisting, Yeremy Pino up there at key passes, but Havertz getting more assists. It's kind of interesting that Pino is creating better chances or more better chances, but lots of them are getting put away. I guess that's because his chances are going to Kai Havertz, who hasn't been a very good goal scorer, while Havertz's key passes are going to Pino, who's been a decent goal scorer. And then finally, movement. Again, not something I'm too worried about, but we're in a decent spot here in the middle. So overall, I think we're in a pretty good spot when it comes to analytics. The things we need to be good at and should be good at to be successful, we are good at as a team and as an individual. So I feel like we're in a pretty good spot. And most importantly, there's no big red flags that really worry me based on these analytics I've seen so far. Now we're going to look through some Premier League stats, see if they back up what we saw in the data hub, starting with the team stats and possession, where we finished third on 55%. Decent spot considering we use kind of two different tactics. One focus on possession, one focus on possession, not even slightly. So I think we're still in a decent spot there. We look at goals. Liverpool topped the goal scoring charts with 97. We have 11 less with 86, but still second in the league, 4 more than United or Tottenham. Expected goals, Liverpool 91. They scored 97, so they scored 6 more. We were expected 80. We scored 86, so also 6 more. So we're in a pretty decent spot with Liverpool. I feel like they just have more chances than we do. Which leads to them having more goals, but I think we're better defensively. In terms of penalties, we had 9 penalties taken. Only 6 scored. I'd like to see us do a little bit better there. Best cross completion, kind of saw that. Goals from corners, the most with 10. Up there with Manchester United. Really like that. Direct free kicks, also the most with Liverpool at 4. I don't score many direct free kicks, so I'm happy to see that. 1 indirect free kick. Pass completion, 4th at 89%. Shots, Liverpool, 120 more than us. Ridiculous. 70 more shots on target. So that's where all the goals come from. They just have a lot more shots and shots on target. The ratio is pretty good, though, 47%. The conversion rate, 12% for us. Also 12% for Liverpool. Conceded. There we are, though. We have the best defense. 27 goals conceded, 38 matches. Arsenal second. We know they overperformed defensively, and they still conceded 2 more goals than we did. Manchester United, though, pretty far behind. 11 more goals than us, sitting in 3rd. Liverpool with 12 more goals conceded than us. Expected goals conceded, we expected 34. Conceded, 27? So 7 more. But Arsenal expected 46, and they conceded 29. I expect they're going to concede a lot more goals next year. I'd be surprised if they didn't. We also are the only team not to concede a goal from a corner. We conceded 1 direct free kick, 1 indirect free kick, had 17 clean sheets. Rest of these, not too worried about. You won't get high in most of these numbers. But if we look at the net transfer spend, we spent the 7th most, 75 million net. Even though we did spend 171 million on 1 player, we still had a lot less net spend than Liverpool, 236, just to finish 2nd. They also had a higher salary than us. There's definitely like a couple tiers here. You got City, United, and Liverpool, all kind of in a similar spot. Then about 40-some million down, you've got us. And then 70-some million down, you've got basically everyone else. So I think we're definitely the team that overperformed the most based on how much we're spending per annum, compared to the likes of Liverpool, who we beat to the title, United, who finished 4th, and City, who just finished 5th, I think. Now looking at player-specific stats, starting with average rating, the top 2 average ratings were Haaland and Mbappe, both on a 7.74. Adi Chile, up next, are the first defender and our first player at 7.62. The next for us is Mancini at 7.48, so our 3rd center back is the 6th best player in the Premier League based on average rating. Bruno Thiago up there as well as our best attacking player on a 7.4. Then our other center back, Valentin Cerezo, 7.37. And then one more player, Yeremy Pino, 7.36. Now in terms of actual goals, Mbappe scored 36 in 36 appearances. Moukoko, 33 in 33 appearances. Haaland, 32 in 35 appearances. And then you have kind of a drop to Bruno Thiago with 23 in 27 appearances. So he hasn't had as many appearances as most of the people around him. I think he's done a decent job. And obviously, it's his first season in the Premier League. And he's only 24 years old. You know, likes of Haaland and Mbappe around their 30s. Moukoko's still pretty young, but he's a freak. If you look at expected goals, Haaland had the most with 28. He scored a few more than expected. Moukoko, 25, scored 33. Mbappe, expected 22, scored 36. 14 more goals than expected. That is bonkers. Just like Arsenal are likely to regress defensively, I don't expect Mbappe is going to overperform his XG that much next season. Hopefully, Bruno Thiago can compete a little bit more for the Premier League Golden Boot. Up next, so shots. Erling Haaland had the most, 226, a lot more than anyone else. Kind of the same for shots on target. Conversion rate, though, our best was Mike Fromm at 22, Sterling at 21, Bruno Thiago at 20. And we don't see Erling Haaland anywhere on here. He's 18 or below, and he had the most shots. Not great, but obviously he got a decent amount of goals, but Mbappe has just been a freak this year. What else we got? Penalties. Our top was Bruno Thiago. He was our main penalty taker. Scored 4 of his 6. Scored all of them for us at Sporting, and missed his first here at Chelsea. And missed 1 more in his next 5. Okay season from him in terms of from the penalty spot. Assists in the Premier League was led by Christian Pavon with 14. Our top was Kai Havertz with 10. And then we had Pino and Thiago both on 8. But if you look at per 90 stats, Havertz goes up to 2nd. So I definitely think we rotated more than the average team. And that's why we're going to be better in these per 90 stats. Yeremy Pino jumps way up. Mason Mount jumps into it. Bruno Thiago joins as well. Key passes, Yeremy Pino with 106. Kai Havertz, 79. If you go to key passes per 90, Yeremy Pino 2nd, 4.56. Above Odegaard by 0.4 pass per 90, even though he had a lot more key passes. Mason Mount jumps on this list as well, 3.45. And there's Kai Havertz at 3.27. Chances created, Odegaard 34, Havertz 25, Pino 21. So Havertz didn't have as many key passes, but he created more chances. That's interesting. I wonder why that is. What else we got that I'm interested in? Not too worried about pass completion. That's usually just center backs. Cross completion, not too worried about the dribbles. Defensively, I'm not too worried about many of these either. Typically, the worst teams are going to be on these lists because they have to make more tackles. So, not too concerned about that. Conceded, though, let's go look at the goalkeepers. Horazzo, fewest goals conceded in the league. Joint with Bilo, but he played 14 less games. Bison, 16 appearances and 2 more goals. Ramsdale is the next one that had the similar amount of appearances to Horazzo. 2 more, but conceded 6 more goals. And they massively overperformed. And next is Andre Onana, who allowed 34. Clean sheets, Horazzo had 16. Conceded per 90. Horazzo, the lowest at 0.66. Ramsdale there at 0.78. Expected conceded per 90. We see Ramsdale at 1.24. And he only conceded 0.78. I just don't think that can be reproduced next season. There's the expected goals prevented. Nearly 17 for Ramsdale. I expect that to overhalve next year. I would be surprised if it didn't. But Horazzo's in a very good spot as well. Saves per 90. Horazzo there, 3.49. Ramsdale, 3.76. Expected, Ramsdale, 3.76. So he saved exactly what he should have. But he had an insane expected goals prevented. That's weird. Save percentage, Horazzo up there with Ramsdale at 84. And then expected save, we got Horazzo at 87. And then Ramsdale just saving exactly what he should. Not anything more, but still having an insane expected goals prevented. In this episode, we're going to take a look through the squad, see where we might need to improve going into next season. Obviously, we're going to be in the Champions League next season. That's definitely a step up from the Europa League, but we did just win the Premier League. You know, the teams in the Premier League, at least at the top, are the same kind of quality as the teams we're going to be facing in the knockouts of the Champions League. The first 7 seasons of this save, the Champions League was won by a Premier League team every single season, mostly Liverpool. So winning the Premier League should bode pretty well for us in the Champions League next season. So I think, especially in the first team, we don't really need to make any changes. I think all we can really add is maybe a little bit better depth at a few positions. In terms of the starting lineup, I think this is our best starting lineup with Mason Mount in there. Mariba as the playmaker. Might change this role. We'll have to kind of work with that in the preseason. But Ruggeri, I thought he was very solid this season. I don't think we can really improve on him. It's really hard to find good fullbacks in this game. Reece James at right back, I think is perfectly fine. Center backs were very good this season. Horazzo obviously was amazing. Camavinga as a defensive midfielder, like it seems like a lot of times it's hard to get really good ratings at defensive midfielder, especially consistently. And Camavinga was consistently very good. And then in the front three, I mean, they were inconsistent at points this season, but I do expect big things for front three of Thiago, Pino, and Kai Havertz. So I don't think we really need to make many changes to the first team. We do have some money to make changes, though. Obviously, finances is a worry, 112 million. But I'm hoping with hopefully better sponsorships this year. Obviously, we saw it went down 200 million. Hopefully that bounces back up. And with us being in the Champions League, hopefully that'll fix our financial issue. So even though we do have 168 million in the transfer budget, 1.33 million in the wage budget, especially this season, I might not fully use all of that up. I doubt I'm going to spend 171 million on a goalkeeper or any position really. Wait till we're back to be in a solid financial position, then we can get back to spending money. But we're going to try to make improvements where we need to make them because I'm not going to hold back. I want to win the FA Cup. That's obviously priority number 1. And I also want to win the Champions League. So the areas I do think we could improve on. If we look through our bench, back goalkeeper, no issues. Right back, possibly. Obviously, Jimmy Wong is homegrown in club, so that's really valuable. He was never really very good, but he was, for the most part, he wasn't awful. Except in Europe, for the most part, he was pretty bad. Obviously, I would consider it, but he's on pretty high wages as well, 98K. In terms of squad building, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to replace Jimmy Wong right now. But left back is a position I have targeted as a place I could improve. Reguilon is our current backup left back. He's got 1 more year on his deal. And he's just never been good for us. He's 34 years old. His physicals are really starting to drop. I would like to improve that position. Ruggeri's a great starter. But I never felt great about Reguilon coming off the bench or having to start because of injury or suspension. I would like a player that could feel a little bit better about bringing in a left back. In terms of midfield, I think we're fine. You know, Kessie is the backup defensive midfielder, or more defensive central midfielders like a box-to-box guy. Fromm kind of is that, developmental midfielder that can come off and do an okay job. And then Gavi obviously is the main guy off the bench. He does have some interest in him, though, and he would definitely be a player. He has, of all of our players that got major game time, other than Raheem Sterling, he has and I guess Reguilon, he has the worst average rating. Definitely the worst of anyone that was mostly starter for the most of the season. He's definitely a guy I would consider cashing in on. He's still 26. His attributes are still really good, but he wasn't even very good for us last season, the little time we had with him. So he's got a transfer value of 104 to 113 million. That do a lot of good for our financial position. And I think we can bring in a player that's, in terms of performances, maybe not in terms of attributes, but in terms of performances, I think we can bring in somebody that's a little bit better. Be a better option off the bench as a super sub or having to start. But Gavi, I don't feel awful about playing him. It just has never really wowed me. And then in terms of the wing, this is a position I wanted to improve coming into this season. I was not happy with our backups being Zvonarek and Sterling, and they didn't really show me much this year to make me not want to also improve that position again going into next season. Raheem Sterling does have another year left on his deal, but he is getting up there in age, 36 years old. Wouldn't be surprised if he retired sooner rather than later. I wouldn't be surprised either if I sold him in this window and brought in somebody that's going to be better and that I actually have belief in off the bench in a wide area, because I never felt great about bringing either of them on to make a difference in the wide areas. So mostly I'd just leave on being on average because they were just better players than what I had on the bench. So that's probably the biggest position I want to improve on. An actual threat off the bench in those wide areas. In terms of backup striker, I'm very happy with Sesko. Depth in the midfield, very happy with Isaac Beatty as a kind of third defensive midfielder. Can play these midfield roles as well. Then we've got some other guys like third choice goalkeeper Baxter. Reg Nielsen playing that center back or right back. Perfectly happy with him. Barry Kendrick wasn't great, but he didn't really play much and didn't have to play much. James Boothie would probably be going out on loan once again. And then Cisse, I think we can get him back on another year loan. He was basically just here because we didn't need to register him. And if we need that again next year, then I might bring him back. Didn't really play much, but didn't play awful when he did play. Didn't really play in many big matches, so can't really judge him too harshly or too favorably either way. All right, I think we're going to end this episode there. I'm not sure exactly how long this is going to end up being. Probably a little bit longer than I'd like. The recording is currently a little over an hour and 15 minutes. Don't know how much I'm going to cut out, but yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a long video, most likely, but I have a tendency to ramble. I don't know if you've noticed that by this point. So I'll see you next episode for the start of our second full season here at Chelsea. We have won the Premier League. That is one of the goals for the series checked off, but we still have to win the FA Cup and we need to win the Champions League, but it doesn't necessarily have to be here at Chelsea. So hopefully we can win the FA Cup, and that'll give us options going into year 3. But I'd like to get the Champions League knocked out as well. That's definitely one of my goals. I want to win as many games and as many competitions as possible, and that includes possibly going back-to-back in the Premier League. If you made it this far, why don't you like the video, subscribe, and click the bell. The links to all my socials and my Twitch are in the description. I really appreciate all your support. Thank you all for joining me, and I'll see you next time.